right, Groovy Gang, strap yourselves in because today's deep dive is going to be a wild one.
Oh, I'm so ready. Hit me with it.
We're warping back to the 90s, diving headfirst into the wonderfully weird world of Earthworm Jim, issue 2 to be exact, 4 whitings and a mackerel.
4 whitings and a mackerel. Now, that's a title that just screams 90s. I love it.
Right. So we've got stacks of your notes and research here ready to unearth the best of its humor and figure out why this comic still resonates with folks today. Like, what is it about this issue specifically that makes it such a perfect example of Earthworm Jim humor?
Well, for me, it's a microcosm, you know. This issue just perfectly distills everything that makes Earthworm Jim so unique. The over-the-top action, the bizarre visuals, and of course the humor.
Oh, the humor. We've got to talk about the humor. I was cracking up just rereading this issue.
Me too. Honestly, it's like perfectly preserved 90s absurdity.
So to get everyone on the same page, we've got Earthworm Jim, everyone's favorite annelid astronaut, and his trusty sidekick Peter Puppy trying to stop Bob the Goldfish from, wait for it, marrying Princess What's-Her-Name.
See, even the premise is ridiculous. You can't go wrong with a name like Princess What's-Her-Name.
Seriously, right out of the gate, you know you're in for a wild ride. And the creators do not disappoint.
Not at all. I was blown away.
One of the moments that had me in stitches was Mr. Cat's lawyer threats from Planet Heck. Like, who dreams up this stuff? What was it about that scene that made you laugh out loud? I know you flagged it in your notes.
Oh, it was pure genius. It's the evil the cat, right? This menacing villain threatening his lawyer minions, but with what? Licking toe jam.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition, it's hilarious.
It's like they said, how can we make the most ridiculous threat possible?
And toe jam was the answer.
Exactly. It completely flips those classic villain tropes on their head. You're expecting some grand evil monologue and then bam, toe jam. Brilliant.
It's that perfect blend of scary and silly, and it just works. It tells you everything you need to know about the tone of this comic from the get-go.
You're right. It's not just about being silly. It's almost like social commentary, just disguised as a joke about toe jam.
100%. It's satire wrapped up in a giant, ridiculous 90s package.
Okay, so speaking of ridiculous, we have to talk about Jim's absolutely terrible sense of direction. It's iconic. Why is that such a classic Earthworm Jim gag?
Well, I mean, Jim's the ultimate lovable idiot. Always getting lost, misunderstanding instructions.
But always somehow stumbling his way through it.
Exactly. It's what makes him so relatable.
Okay, I love that you picked up on that because, yeah, like when he's told to hang right at the 3rd asteroid and he just charges headfirst into an asteroid field, I mean, pure chaos. And that visual, oh man.
It's those visuals, right?
Yeah.
Gives the artist free rein to go totally bonkers.
Bonkers in the best way possible. Like, you know it's ridiculous, but you can't help but laugh.
You're along for the ride, whether you like it or not. And I think that's part of the magic.
And while we're on the topic of visuals, we got to talk about that scene. You know the one? Jim riding that giant mutated hamster to crash the wedding. Seriously, it's burned into my brain. What was it about that visual that stood out to you?
Oh, man, that hamster. It's pure visual comedy gold. Just the sheer absurdity of it.
Right, like of all the ways to crash a wedding.
They chose a giant hamster. It's perfect.
And it's those little details, you know, like they put reins on the hamster, a little saddle. It's those touches that really sell it. It's like the creators are winking at the audience saying, we know this is ridiculous.
But we were going all in.
Yes,
Yeah.
100% committed to the bit. And you can't help but respect that level of dedication to absurdity.
Speaking of commitment to absurdity, we can't forget Bob the Goldfish. And that incredible battle suit. I mean, come on. What makes those over-the-top villain moments work so well in this issue, do you think?
It's Bob, right? He's such a great parody of those classic supervillains, you know, the grand ambitions, the menacing speeches, the completely impractical costume. But he's also just this tiny little goldfish in a bowl.
That contradiction. It's comedic gold.
Absolutely. It's like the writers took every cliche villain trope and just cranked it up to 11. And it's even funnier when Bob inevitably fails spectacularly. Which, speaking of spectacular failures, that cliffhanger ending, the dynamite bouquet, you flagged that as one of your favorites. Why? What makes that ending so perfect?
Oh, man. It's the classic bait and switch. You're expecting a resolution, a happy ending maybe, and then bam! Explosions.
Classic Earthworm Jim. Subverts your expectations and leaves you wanting more. Which, speaking of wanting more, let's dive a little deeper into these characters, shall we? We talked about Jim's heroic idiocy, but I'm really interested in your take on his, like, clueless confidence. What's your read on that?
I think it's central to who he is, you know, that clueless confidence. He's the ultimate 90s anti-hero, not your typical self-assured Superman type. He blunders into situations, but he never doubts himself, even when he probably should.
It's like he's faking it till he makes it, and somehow it works. Okay, but let's talk Peter Peppy. You mentioned his transformation in this issue being a bit Jekyll and Hyde. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I think Peter's really interesting. He's got that classic duality. He's anxious, timid, always trying to rein Jim in, but then he transforms. He becomes this monstrous, destructive force. And sure, it's played for laughs, but you can't help but think there's something deeper there.
Right.
About repressed emotions.
Totally. It's like this pressure cooker of anxiety.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one wrong step for Peter to just snap. And honestly, I think we can all relate to that on some level.
100%.
Yeah.
We all have those moments. Okay, but let's shift gears for a sec. We've got to talk about the villains.
Oh, yes. Bob, Evil the Cat, and of course, the amazingly named Professor Monkey for a Head.
Yeah.
What a lineup. What stands out to you about this particular group of baddies?
It's like they're designed to be ridiculous, over the top ridiculous. And yet, somehow, they work. They're memorable.
They really are. And oddly endearing. It's like, they're not really bad guys, just a little misguided.
Misguided is a good word for them. A little rough around the edges.
Definitely rough around the edges. And you mentioned in your notes that there might even be a surprising amount of depth to these characters. What did you mean by that?
Right. They're like these big, goofy cartoons come to life. But you're onto something with that whole depth thing. Like, yeah, they're ridiculous. But they kind of work on another level, don't they?
Well, look at Bob. Tiny fish in a bowl, trying to rule the universe.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
But underneath it all, there's this undercurrent of, I don't know, almost sadness, this desperate need to prove himself.
Because he's trapped, right, limited by his own tiny fishbowl existence.
Yeah. The ultimate underdog story. Except instead of rooting for him, we're laughing.
Because it's just so absurd. But that contrast with Jim is interesting, too. You have Jim, who's constantly succeeding, even if it's by accident, and Bob, who just keeps failing in increasingly ridiculous ways.
Total opposites. Jim's all about that blind confidence, stumbling into victory, while Bob's all scheming and strategizing, but never getting anywhere.
Blind ambition versus clueless confidence. I love that. And then there's Evil the Cat. I mean, come on. This guy is surrounded by incompetent lawyer minions and constantly on the verge of a total meltdown. What's your take on him?
Oh, Evil the Cat is fascinating. He represents order and chaos all at once. Desperately clinging to control while everything around him falls apart. It's like a commentary on power itself.
Like how power is ultimately an illusion.
Exactly. The more you try to control things, the more chaotic everything becomes. They're kind of profound when you think about it.
Or maybe we're just reading too much into a comic about a worm in a robotic suit.
Maybe. But hey, that's the beauty of Earthworm Jim, right? It's silly and absurd on the surface, but there's also this surprising depth if you're willing to look for it.
And I think that's why it still resonates with people after all these years, don't you? It reminds us not to take ourselves too seriously, to embrace the chaos, laugh at the absurdity of it all.
100%. It's a reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with life's craziness is to just laugh at it.
Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, there you have it. We've slogged our way through the wonderfully weird world of Earthworm Jim, #2, 4 whitings and a mackerel. We've dissected the jokes, psychoanalyzed a goldfish, and even learned a thing or two about the illusion of power, all thanks to this gloriously absurd 90s classic. So until next time, keep it groovy, keep it weird, and remember what Jim always says, beware the cow launcher.
All right, buckle up, because this deep dive is taking us straight into the wacky world of Earthworm Jim, specifically issue 3. Those comics that are just pure fun. This is one of them.
Well, what's wild about Earthworm Jim, though, is that it's not just wacky, right? Like, yeah, you've got the crazy humor and all the action, but underneath, it's poking fun at all those superhero tropes we see everywhere.
Totally. And this issue, it goes all in. We're going to assume you've at least got the basics down.
Yeah.
Earthworm, Super Dude from Space, all that jazz. But this issue throws you right into the chaos.
Oh, from page 1, this crazy cast of characters just explodes onto the scene. You've got Princess, what's her name? Peter, gotta love that sidekick and villains, don't get me started. Professor Monkey for a Head, anyone.
See, and right there you can tell the creators are having a blast. This is Marvel's absurd imprint, which pretty much tells you everything you need to know. Yeah. Not exactly known for subtlety, right? This was their chance to cut loose, get weird, and Earthworm Jim. Fits right in.
100%. And this issue nails that Earthworm Jim blend of slapstick and serious action. Like, Jim's facing off against undead lawyers, which, come on, that's hilarious, but he's still in over his head.
Oh, absolutely. Remember when he starts going on about superhero workman's comp? It's absurd, but the writing is sharp. It winks at you. Everyone's in on the joke.
Exactly. It never takes itself too seriously, which makes the surprises even better. Take Peter Puppy, for example, his big transformation trigger, allergies.
Begonias, to be precise.
Yeah.
And the way they play that allergy for laughs. Classic Earthworm Jim. Unexpected, visually hilarious, especially if Barry Crane draws Peter's, shall we say, enhanced form. Speaking of unexpected, this issue drops a bombshell. Jim's suit. Not even made for him.
And that's where things get really interesting. Yeah, get this. The suit, it was meant for Princess What's-Her-Name all along, and when she puts it on, whole different ball game.
Let's just say Jim's got some serious competition. Our princess goes from damsel in distress to, well, she's a straight-up powerhouse now, taking down bad guys like it's nothing.
And that's what's so great about this issue. It turns that old damsel in distress thing completely on its head. No waiting around to be rescued here. The princess, she grabs that power, and the whole story changes because of it.
You can practically see Jim's ego deflating with every punch she throws. He's even having an existential crisis, wondering, what's a worm got to do to be useful around here? Right? Changes things between them, don't you think?
For sure. And it's not just played for laughs, though it is pretty funny to see Jim squirming. But it makes you look at the princess differently, you know? She's not just the love interest, she's a force. Adds a whole new layer to their whole dynamic.
And Barry Crane. The way he draws her transformation, amazing. We talked about Peter Puppy's new look, but the princess, totally different vibe. Strong, capable, no more frills. You can see that power shift right there on the page.
Exactly. It shows how much thought went into the art in Earthworm Jim. They didn't just slap a power up on her and call it a day. They're using the art to show that change. Her posture, those bold lines, the way she takes up space in the panels now, it's all intentional.
And the colors. It's like they turn the dial up to 11 when she puts on that suit. All that energy, those bold colors. It reminds me of those 90s cartoons this comic loves to play with.
Yeah, the art style. It's a total homage to those cartoons. Exaggerated everything, that fluid, almost bouncy action, and the energy just explodes off the page.
That's Earthworm Jim in a nutshell, over the top, no apologies, and a million visual gags. And it works.
Yeah.
It's like they took that 90s cartoon style and gave it this extra layer of, I don't know, sophistication. Adds to the storytelling without forgetting that, hey, this is a comic book. And that's what makes it so fresh and fun. And it's not just about looking cool. The art really sells those jokes, you know, like you said about those sound effects. Boom, capo. They're practically jumping off the page.
It's true. They're not just there for show. They actually add to the action, you know, become part of the storytelling. And it's not just the sound effects either. It's how those panels are laid out. They're all over the place in a good way. It keeps your eyes moving, keeps the energy high.
Right. You never know what crazy thing you're going to see next or how they're going to fit it on the page. Makes you feel like you're really part of the action. But speaking of crazy, that ending, Evil the Cat, come on.
See? That's Earthworm Jim for you. Absurd, but you can't look away. You're laughing, but you're also dying to know what Evil's gonna do next.
They knew exactly what they were doing, that's for sure, leaving us wanting more. This whole issue, really, it's Earthworm Jim at its best.
Yeah.
You got your wacky humor, crazy action, even a little bit of heart thrown in there for good measure.
I think you nailed it. New readers, old fans, everyone can enjoy this one. Proof that sometimes the silliest stories are the ones that stick with you. And that laughter, yeah, that's a superpower all its own.
No argument there.